The moment that porcelain plate shattered against the side of my head, the world seemed to split into two different kinds of silence. One was the physical kind, the ringing quiet that hums in your ears after a sudden, violent blow. The other was deeper, colder, crawling beneath my ribs like a thin sheet of winter ice spreading across still water. For a moment, I stood there in my own dining room, dazed, watching a few tiny fragments of white porcelain skitter across the hardwood floor. They looked like crushed teeth. Somehow that felt fitting. After all, someone I had loved like my own daughter had just broken something inside me, something far more fragile than a plate. I remember touching the side of my head, feeling the warmth of blood sliding slowly between my fingers. My breath came out in a long, controlled exhale, the same way I used to breathe out when balancing a curling iron over a client's hair back in my salon days. Old instincts die harder than trust, I suppose. Across the table, Vanessa stared at me with her chest rising and falling like a cornered animal. Her pupils were blown wide, her face pale, except for two bright red patches of anger burning on her cheeks. George had risen from his chair so abruptly he knocked it over. It clattered sharply against the tile, but even that sound felt muted to me, swallowed by the same cold quiet that had slipped under my skin. "Vanessa, what the hell?" he stammered, but his voice sounded like it was coming from far away, as if I were hearing him from the bottom of a swimming pool. Beside him, Bernice pressed her hands to her mouth, though the gesture seemed more dramatic than concerned, like she was performing grief rather than feeling it. Dexter froze. I saw it in his eyes. The lawyer in him recognized instantly that something had gone terribly wrong, though he had no idea just how catastrophically wrong for him it would soon become. I straightened my posture. It always surprised people that I could still do that at 71, but I had spent decades standing on my feet cutting hair, shoulders back, chin up, greeting each person with the warmth my mother taught me to carry in my bones. When you spend a lifetime creating beauty for others, you learn how to hold yourself steady no matter how uneven the ground becomes. I turned toward the doorway. My vision blurred slightly, but my step was sure. "You're bleeding," George said, stepping toward me, but not close enough to touch. "Yes," I answered softly. "I am." And something in my voice, its steadiness, its quiet, made everyone still. I reached the small table where my house phone sat. My fingers curled calmly around the receiver. I dialed with the precision of someone pouring tea, each button an affirmation, each beep a promise. When the dispatcher answered, my voice remained steady, even gentle. "This is Tisha Cooper," I said. "I need assistance at my home. I am no longer in danger." The dispatcher's tone sharpened with concern, but I spoke clearly, concisely. I did not look back at the four of them until I had hung up the phone. And when I finally did, they all looked different than they had 5 minutes earlier, like strangers draped in familiar skin. Before we begin, please leave a like and subscribe so I can share more stories with you. But my story did not begin with that plate. My story began long before, with tiny cracks spreading through the life I had spent decades building. Cracks I had chosen to ignore, until one day I realized they weren't cracks at all, but deliberate chisels in the hands of people who were supposed to love me. The truth is, I saw this betrayal coming weeks in advance. It crept into my home the way illness does, quietly, disguised as concern, soft as flattery, smooth as honey. Vanessa had always been ambitious, slippery in a way I used to chalk up to youth. She came from a family where manipulation was considered a kind of tradition, passed down from parent to child the way some families inherit recipes or quilts. Still, I tried to give her grace. Barry always said I saw the good in people, even when it hid behind their shadows. But the first real sign came when she began dropping hints about long-term planning. "Tisha," she said one Sunday afternoon while folding my clean towels without being asked, something she had never once done before. "You really should think about securing your future. It's dangerous living alone at your age." I remember the way she said it, her voice sweet enough to rot fruit. I had chuckled lightly, more out of discomfort than amusement. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm doing just fine. I've lived here alone since Barry passed, and the tenants are right next door if I need anything." Her smile tightened. "Yes, the tenants. But wouldn't it be nicer to have family living here? Someone like my mother who already loves you like her own? She's lonely, you know?" A chill had slipped down my spine then, though I pushed it aside. I didn't want to believe what she was hinting at. I didn't want to believe that my own daughter-in-law had begun laying the groundwork for something sinister. But looking back, that moment was the first shadow of what was coming. Bernice joined the conversation soon after, always with the same softly condescending tone of a nurse explaining basic instructions to a confused patient. You know, Tisha, many people your age transfer their home to a younger family member. It protects the asset from medical costs. You might want to consider letting Vanessa and George take over ownership. Or perhaps let me stay here. I'd be such good company. But the day things changed forever was the day George began echoing their words. Mom, he said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table, tapping his finger nervously against the wood. I just worry you're not thinking everything through. Vanessa and I want what's best for you. Maybe letting Bernice move in would help, or signing the house to us. We'd take care of it. My heart pinched, the way it had the first time he left for school, clutching his little superhero backpack. But this time, the pain was different, heavier, sharper. Not maternal worry, maternal betrayal. I looked him in the eye. George, your father built this house with his hands. My salon paid for every brick. I am not handing it to anyone. He looked away. That was when I knew something had changed in him. I could feel Vanessa's influence soaking into him like water into dry earth. The next week, the family dinner incident was arranged. I remember cooking that night. I remember my hands moving automatically through motions they had performed thousands of times, seasoning, stirring, tasting, but everything felt distant, hollow. I felt like I was preparing a meal for someone else's life. When Vanessa and George arrived with Bernice and Dexter, I should have known. Dexter carried himself with that slick arrogance lawyers sometimes wear like cologne. Their smiles were too broad, their compliments too forced. And halfway through the meal, with practiced theatrics, Vanessa sighed as if overwhelmed by the weight of responsibility. Tisha, she said, sliding a stack of neatly bound papers across the table, we've been talking, and we just want to help. These documents will protect your home. They'll make everything easier for you. Easier for me. I remember pressing my palm against the cool wooden edge of the table. The pages were thick, crisp. They smelled faintly of toner and deceit. Dexter cleared his throat. It's all very standard, Tisha. Perfectly legal. Signing them would secure your future. But I had already known. I had already seen the truth weeks earlier. I lifted the top page. 3 words leapt out at me like venomous snakes. Transfer of ownership. I felt my heart thud once, like a warning bell struck deep inside a lighthouse. I looked at each of them slowly. Vanessa, her smile stretched so tightly across her face it seemed ready to split. Bernice, clasping her pearls as though playing the role of innocent bystander. George, silent but complicit. Dexter, the puppeteer in a tailored suit. No, I said quietly, I am not signing any of this. The transformation in Vanessa was instant, like a candle snuffed out by a sudden gust of wind. Her sweetness vanished, her face twisted. You're unbelievable, she hissed. Ungrateful. You're old, Tisha. You need help. We're trying to protect you, and you're being impossible. I stood slowly. I do not need protection from the people who are trying to steal from me. She lunged toward me, her face contorted. I turned slightly, meaning only to leave the room, but that was when she saw red. Her hand shot out, grabbed the nearest plate, and the next thing I knew, porcelain was slicing through the air. And now here we were, the plate shattered, the silence thick, the truth thicker. But in that moment, standing there bleeding, I no longer felt fear, only clarity, because they didn't know. They had no idea what I had already done. 2 weeks earlier, I had walked into the law office of Harold Mintz, a man who had been both my attorney and my friend for nearly 30 years. He had handled my salon lease agreements, Barry's estate papers, even the land deed when we built the extension for the tenants. Harold had listened carefully as I laid everything out. The comments, the pressure, the manipulation, the hints that sharpened each week like knives being honed. He had nodded once firmly. Tisha, he said, you're right to come to me. They're setting you up, but you're not powerless. And so we planned. We transferred the house, not to George, not to Vanessa, not to Bernice, but to the tenants who had lived beside me for nearly 15 years. Honest, hardworking people who treated the property as lovingly as if it were already their own. people who would never betray me. The transfer was conditional, structured through an irrevocable trust we drafted meticulously. It was the kind of move no greedy relative could undo, no matter how many lawyers they paraded through my home. We secured my finances as well. Layered protections, multiple trusts, automatic reporting triggers. Harold called it a castle strategy. I called it peace of mind. But the most important step happened in Harold's private office when he slid a document across the table. "These are formal reports," he said, "for elder exploitation and financial coercion, for if things escalate." I signed them. I never imagined I would need them so soon. And now, standing in my dining room with blood on my cheek and porcelain at my feet, I finally turned back to them. "You thought you were smarter than me?" I said softly. "But I saw this coming. Every inch of it." Vanessa's face drained of color. Bernice's breath caught. George looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. Dexter swallowed hard, the sound sharp in the quiet room. I continued, my voice gentle but razor sharp. "The house is no longer mine. It belongs to people I trust. My accounts are protected, and the reports of elder abuse are already filed, with your name on them, Dexter." Dexter stumbled back a step. Bernice let out a weak cry. Vanessa's lip trembled, her bravado draining like water from a cracked glass. George's eyes glistened with something I couldn't name yet, regret, maybe, or shame. But me? I felt nothing but calm, the kind of calm that comes when you have already prepared your escape long before the fire starts. And as the distant wail of sirens grew closer, I pressed a cloth gently against my wound and whispered a single truth to myself. This was only the beginning. The sirens were still distant when I stepped away from the wall, the cloth pressed gently against the side of my head. The room around me felt stretched, almost elastic, as though grief and revelation had pulled its corners too far. Vanessa sat rigid in her chair, her hands trembling faintly in her lap. Dexter paced in small, agitated circles, his polished shoes clicking against the hardwood like impatient metronome beats ticking toward his own undoing. Bernice muttered something under her breath, perhaps a prayer, perhaps another one of her dramatic laments about being misunderstood. And my son, my George, stood suspended between them all, his hands half raised, his face etched with uncertainty, regret, and the dawning realization of his own complicity. I took one slow breath, then another. The cloth absorbed the blood steadily. It surprised me how warm it felt, as if my own body were offering comfort through the heat of it. I didn't want to faint, not here, not in front of them. There was too much still to say, too much that needed to be understood before the officers walked through my door. The sirens grew louder. You can't do this," Vanessa finally whispered, her voice thin as cracked glass. She stared at me with wide eyes that no longer glimmered with manipulation, only panic. Pure, unfiltered panic that reminded me of a child caught in a lie too tangled to explain. "You can't just give away the house. That's not fair. That's not." "Fair?" I repeated softly. "Vanessa, you tried to steal it from me." She flinched as if I had slapped her. The irony of that wasn't lost on me, considering she was the one who had thrown a plate at my head. But I wasn't raising my voice. Anger was not necessary. The truth did all the cutting for me. The sirens became unmistakable now. 2 squad cars, maybe 3. Dexter stopped pacing. "Tisha," he said sharply, attempting to gather whatever scraps of authority he believed he still possessed, "you need to think clearly. You're injured. You're upset. Let's not escalate this. Nobody here intended any harm." "The police will decide that," I replied gently. His jaw tensed. I watched as he swallowed down the fear creeping up from his chest. His eyes flickered to the smashed porcelain on the floor, the blood smeared across my temple, the scattered documents he'd brought like a wolf offering a lamb-shaped gift. "Tisha," Bernice cut in, her voice trembling as she pressed a handkerchief to her chest. "We are family. Families disagree. Families argue. We didn't mean for any of this to..." Her voice cracked into a whimper. I had heard that whimper before, many times. It was the sound she used whenever she needed sympathy, whenever she felt her grip slipping on someone's emotions. A practiced sadness, worn smooth from overuse. "Bernice," I said quietly, "your daughter assaulted me. Your son drafted papers to take everything I own. The only family part of tonight was that you all expected me to suffer in silence because of it." Bernice's face crumpled, but again, it was a performance. I had learned that the hard way. George stepped forward. "Mom, let me help. Let me at least get you some ice. You shouldn't be standing there like..." "Like what?" I asked, my voice softer now, tired. Like someone who finally decided she deserves better than manipulation? Someone who refuses to be intimidated into giving up her life's work? Someone who knows the difference between love and conditional affection? He froze. In that moment, I no longer saw my son. Not the boy who used to run into my arms after school, not the teenager who hugged me tight at Barry's funeral. What I saw was a grown man who had surrendered his judgment, his compassion, and his backbone to a woman who wielded control like a scalpel. "Mom?" he murmured again, but the word wavered. The police cars finally pulled into the driveway, their lights flashing across the windows in sharp strokes of red and blue. The visual rhythm spilled across the floor, splashing color over the broken plate like a warning signal the universe had been trying to send me for months. I walked to the entryway and opened the door before the officers could knock. The cooler night air washed over me, carrying the scent of pine from the front yard. Barry had planted those himself years ago, saying he wanted the house to smell like something alive, long after he was gone. The breeze felt like a blessing on my face. One of the officers, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and the kind of posture that suggested years of carrying other people's crises, stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said gently, "we received a call from you?" "Yes," I replied. "My daughter-in-law assaulted me. I am injured." His eyes flicked to the blood on my temple, then to the tense silhouettes gathered behind me in the dining room doorway. The expressions there had shifted, Vanessa pale as a ghost, Bernice clutching her handkerchief, Dexter stiff with defensive fury, and George looking lost between them all. "Are you safe now?" the officer asked. "I am," I said. "Thank you for coming." The second officer, a younger woman with sharp observational instincts, stepped forward. "We'll need to hear everyone's account," she said. "But we'll start with you. Do you need medical attention?" "I'll need someone to clean the wound," I replied. "But I can talk." She nodded, leading me toward the sofa. She guided me down with gentle hands, and I appreciated the steadiness of her presence. As she took notes, the first officer stepped into the dining room and began speaking with the others. For a moment, I simply watched the shadows of their movements on the wall, the frantic hand gestures from Vanessa, the stiff posturing from Dexter, the trembling shoulders of Bernice, the sagging confusion weighing down my son's body. They looked like ghosts pacing through their own shame. When the officer returned, he asked if anyone else lived in the house. "No," I said. "But my tenants live in the attached suite next door. They're honest people, good people." The younger officer spoke as she dabbed an antiseptic wipe gently at my wound. "We'll need to photograph this," she said softly. I nodded. She raised a small camera, apologizing before taking each flash. I kept my posture straight. I refused to hide my face. Let the world see exactly what had been done to me tonight. When she finished, she asked, "Has this happened before?" "No," I replied. "But the manipulation has been going on for months. They were trying to take my home from me." The male officer looked toward the dining room again. "We may need to file multiple charges," he said. "Assault, coercion, attempted exploitation." "I've already filed reports," I told him. "Weeks ago." Both officers paused. "You were preparing for this?" the woman asked. "I was preparing for the truth," I answered. I watched them exchange a look, one of professional respect. The male officer stood. "We're going to speak with them again. We will separate them for statements." And then, one by one, the unraveling began. The officers escorted each member of my family from the dining room to the porch, speaking with them alone. I overheard fragments, Vanessa's frantic denials, Dexter's clipped legal jargon, Bernice's breathy pleas, George's halting confusion as he tried to reconcile what he believed with what he suddenly realized he had allowed. I sat quietly, hands folded in my lap, breathing in the scent of pine that drifted through the cracked window. It reminded me of Barry. I could almost feel his hand on my shoulder, warm and reassuring, the way it had been the night we first moved into this house. He had stood behind me then, his chest against my back, his chin resting on my hair. "This will always be our sanctuary, Tish," he'd whispered. "Our safe place." Tonight, for the first time in years, it finally felt true again. After several minutes, the officers returned, thanking me for my patience. The younger one sat across from me with her notebook open. "Your daughter-in-law has admitted to throwing the plate," she said carefully. "She claims it was an accident brought on by emotional distress." I lifted one eyebrow. "Of course she does. But," the officer continued, "the physical evidence and your injury indicate it was deliberate." And the conflicting statements from the others support that conclusion. A tight breath escaped my chest. Part relief, part sorrow. The older officer added, "We'll be taking her in for assault. Depending on the outcome of the elder exploitation investigation you started, further charges may follow." Vanessa's shriek echoed faintly from outside when she learned the decision. I didn't rise. I didn't move. I simply closed my eyes as the officers led her to the patrol car. Dexter grew pale when they informed him he would also be questioned in connection with the existing reports. His carefully constructed facade cracked. The polished lawyer suddenly looked like a boy who had been caught stealing from the church donation box. Bernice begged the officers not to separate her from Vanessa. They didn't entertain it. George, however, approached me slowly. His face looked ashen, his eyes red. "Mom," he began, but I held up a hand. "Not now, George." His breath trembled. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know what they were doing." "I believe you," I said softly, "but you didn't want to know, and that is just as dangerous." He sank onto the edge of the coffee table, his hands clasped tightly together. "I should have protected you." "Yes," I answered honestly, "you should have." The officers escorted the others outside, their voices firm, their steps purposeful. Eventually, the house grew quiet, save for the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint buzz of adrenaline fading from my body. The police cars slowly rolled away, their lights disappearing into the night. I sat alone on the sofa for a long while, staring at the marks the plate had left on the floor. Eventually, I went to the kitchen sink and rinsed the cloth, watching the water swirl pink then clear again. My hand shook only once. That was all. I steadied myself on the counter. I had endured manipulation. I had endured betrayal. I had endured violence. But I was still standing. Maybe a little bruised, maybe a little bloodied, but unbroken. When I returned to the dining room, the house felt lighter, as if someone had opened a window and allowed all the stale fear to drift out. I turned on the small lamp in the corner, letting its soft golden glow fill the space. And then, as I looked around the room, the broken plate, the abandoned legal papers, the empty chairs, I felt something unexpected rise inside my chest. A slow, deliberate fire. Not of anger, of awakening. Everything that had been done to me tonight, everything they had attempted, every lie, every manipulation, every silent cruelty, they had not broken me. They had revealed me. The house felt different the morning after everything unraveled, as if someone had reached into the walls during the night and pulled out the wires that once hummed with tension. The silence was not oppressive anymore. It was spacious. It was clean. It was mine again. I woke earlier than usual, the way I always did, after nights that changed the shape of my life. The wound on my temple throbbed a little when I sat up, but the pain felt distant, like a fading echo of what had already been resolved. I touched it lightly, felt the tenderness there, and let out a slow breath. It would heal. I would heal. And unlike Vanessa, Bernice, or Dexter, I had nothing to hide from. Sunlight spilled across the floor in a soft, warm sheet as I opened the curtains. The pine trees Barry had planted stood tall outside, stretching upward as if greeting me personally. For a moment, I let myself stand there with my hand on the window frame, soaking in the quiet strength of the morning. It was the first one I had experienced in a long while that didn't feel like walking across glass. But healing doesn't happen through stillness alone. It requires action. So I went to the kitchen, brewed a pot of tea, and sat at the table where everything had exploded the night before. A few tiny crumbs of porcelain still lingered in the corner of the floor. I hadn't gotten to those yet. They glistened faintly in the morning light like stars scattered across a dark sky. I would sweep them soon. But first, I needed to think, to breathe, to understand what came next. As I lifted my mug, there was a soft knock at the door. I wasn't startled. There was only one kind of knock that gentle at this hour. When I opened the door, my tenants, Melissa and her husband Ron, stood there. Melissa held a small container of homemade soup. Ron carried a grocery sack filled with soft bandages, peroxide, and a tiny first aid kit he clearly bought on the way over. Their eyes were full of concern. "We heard what happened," Melissa said. "The officer spoke to us briefly. Are you all right?" "I am," I assured her. "Truly, come in." They stepped inside. Melissa set the soup on the counter with the kind of care people use when placing something fragile in a museum display. Ron placed the bag beside it and studied me with the quiet, sincere look of a man who had raised daughters of his own. "Let me see the injury," he said carefully. "Only if you're comfortable." I nodded. He cleaned the wound with a gentleness I found grounding. Melissa brewed me a second cup of tea, even though I already had one. That was the kind of people they were, steady, attentive, full of small kindnesses that asked for nothing in return. I didn't need to explain why the house was in their names now. I didn't need to justify the trust I placed in them. They understood that safety wasn't always found in blood relatives. Sometimes it came in the form of neighbors who became family through presence instead of obligation. "You tell us if you need anything," Melissa said once Ron finished cleaning the wound. "We are right next door." I touched her hand. "Thank you. I mean that." When they left, the house felt even lighter than before. Their presence had swept away the last residue of the chaos. I watched them walk across the lawn, chatting softly with each other. There was comfort in seeing normal life continue around me, a reminder that last night's storm belonged to the past. Still, there were loose threads needing attention. I dialed Harold first. He answered on the second ring. "Tisha, I saw the report already," he said without preamble. "I'm so sorry, but I'm glad, more than glad, that you're safe." "I'm all right," I told him. "I just wanted to thank you for everything. You helped me protect my home, my finances, my sanity, and it made all the difference." I heard him exhale with relief. "You did the right thing, and yesterday's incident will only strengthen the legal case. Their behavior confirms the pattern we documented." Something in his tone steadied me further. A lawyer can give you paperwork, but a friend gives you peace. Harold had given me both. "I'll be in touch as the investigation progresses," he added. "But as of this morning, you're protected. They can't touch what's yours." I thanked him again and hung up, feeling a deeper sense of closure settle into place. But closure sometimes brings reflection with it, and reflection can sting. I looked around my home, remembering the countless evenings George had spent here when he was young. The way he'd stretch across the living room floor with his toy fire truck. The way he'd lean into Barry's side during a movie. The way he'd help me carry groceries, insisting he was the man of the house when Barry worked late. Somewhere along the years, he had drifted. Slowly, silently. He began relying on others, on Vanessa's confidence, on Dexter's advice, on Bernice's coddling. He forgot the strength of his own judgment. That was how people lose themselves. Not all at once, but grain by grain, like a sculpture eroding under constant wind. And now he had to face the truth. So later that afternoon, when he knocked on my door with timid knuckles, I was ready. He looked tired, older than his age, eyes red, shoulders hunched like he carried a weight he didn't know how to set down. "Mom," he whispered when I opened the door, "can we talk?" I nodded and stepped aside. He entered slowly, as if afraid the house itself might reject him. He sat at the dining table, the same spot where the ambush had taken place. I sat across from him, folding my hands gently. For a few long moments, he didn't speak. Then, "I'm sorry." The words trembled. I watched them fall from his lips like stones dropping into deep water. "I didn't know what they were planning," he continued. "I mean, I knew they were pushing, and I thought they meant well. I wanted to believe them. I didn't want to think. I didn't want to believe they would hurt you. I didn't want to see it." He covered his face with both hands. His shoulders shook once and then again. Seeing my grown son cry stirred something deep in me. An ache, yes, but also a distant tenderness. "George," I said softly, "you let yourself depend on people who used you. You let yourself be swayed by someone who cared more about control than love, but you are not beyond forgiveness. You are not beyond growth." He lowered his hands, eyes swollen and raw. "Do you hate me?" The question cut deeper than Vanessa's plate. "No," I whispered, "but I needed you to protect me, and instead, I had to protect myself from you." He swallowed hard. "I don't know how to fix that," he murmured. "You start," I said gently, "by choosing better people, and by choosing yourself." He blinked, as if the concept surprised him. It probably did. Vanessa had trained him well. trained him to feel small so she could feel big, to doubt himself so she could step in as the authority. He had walked into that relationship with open hands and walked out a stranger to himself. But there, across from me, I saw the faintest flicker of the boy he once was, the one who wanted to do right, the one who meant well. He reached across the table, not for my hand this time, but simply to shorten the distance. "I want to make this right," he whispered. "Then you will," I said, "but healing takes time, and your path is yours to walk." He nodded slowly. Our conversation ended with a quiet understanding, not reconciliation, not yet, but foundation, the first stone in a bridge that might one day become strong again. After he left, I stepped onto the porch, breathing in the cool afternoon air. The world looked different, brighter somehow. Not because the betrayal had vanished, it hadn't, but because I had finally reclaimed the part of myself I had allowed to be overshadowed for too long. The next days moved gently. I visited the doctor to ensure the wound would heal properly. I deep cleaned the dining room, sweeping away the last shards of porcelain with a kind of ritualistic satisfaction. I walked around the garden Barry and I had planted together, trimming branches, tying up the roses, talking aloud to him the way I sometimes did when the house grew too quiet. And then one morning, while pouring myself a cup of tea, I realized something profound. I was free. Not just legally, not just physically, emotionally. The deepest betrayal a family can deliver is not theft or violence. It is the erosion of trust. But once you survive that erosion, once you stand on solid ground again, you become harder to shake, more rooted, more certain of who you are. I began taking long afternoon walks, reconnecting with neighbors I had grown too distant from. I visited a local community center where a knitting circle met weekly, most of them women around my age. They welcomed me with kind smiles and gentle humor, and I found myself laughing, genuinely laughing, in a way I hadn't in months. For the first time since Barry died, I felt purpose return like spring sunlight thawing winter soil. One evening, as I sat on my porch watching the golden hour settle across the pine trees, I thought about everything I had endured. The manipulation, the slander, the financial schemes, the assault, the loss of trust in my own son. And then I thought about what came after, the planning, the courage, the quiet strength I hadn't known I still possessed. And I felt vindicated. Not in a vengeful way, in a peaceful, resolute way. Vanessa was facing assault charges. Dexter was being investigated by the state bar. Bernice had stopped harassing me. George was in therapy, working on untangling the knots he had allowed others to tie around him. And me? I was living. I was healing. I was becoming someone new, not the naive matriarch who believed love alone could fix things, but the vindicated matriarch who knew her worth and protected it fiercely. My home was safe. My heart was safe. My future was mine again. And as the evening light softened, I felt Barry beside me, not in memory alone, but in spirit, in the quiet pride I knew he would have felt. I closed my eyes, let the warmth settle across my face, and whispered into the breeze, "I made it, Barry. I finally made it." Now, if you've walked with me through this entire journey, I want to ask you something from the deepest part of my healed heart. What would you have done in my place? Tell me where you're listening from. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you feel moved to support more stories like this, you can always use the super thanks. With heartfelt greetings, until next time.